Hello, and welcome to part 18. Today, we're diving into a very deep topic and exploring some thought-provoking points. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. This channel isn't just about sharing information, it's about expanding your perspective and making you more aware of the world around you. So, if you're ready, let's get started and dive into today's topic. Suggestions for spreading anxiety/stress. Nothing happens on its own. A hand cannot make a sound by moving left and right alone. However, when it joins with another hand, a sound is produced. A woman cannot give birth alone. The action of dropping a pen from above can only result in it falling if combined with gravity. When a boxer punches, if the opponent is in the right place and makes the correct maneuver, that punch alone won't result in anything. Emotions are the same. An emotion cannot produce any significant result, except for the natural emotional level it requires, without combining with a faulty perception of the emotion. Thus, a feeling of distress will arise. This feeling will be met with a wrong perception, and only then will it produce a psychology that will affect us. Can the rains falling alone be enough to get wet? If it is met with the response of being without an umbrella, only then will the result of getting wet occur. Therefore, the result of being affected depends not on the distress we face, but on how I respond to it. Therefore, we will immediately activate the flexible thought of IT could be. While the brain activates the defense system, we will launch the IT could be missile system. I'm stressed? It could be. But too much? It could be. But it hasn't passed? It could be. What if it doesn't pass? It could be. Secondly, we will focus not on the distress itself, but on whether our response to it is correct. We cannot block the boxer, but we can neutralize the blows by making the correct maneuvers. Distress is the beggar knocking on the door. We won't focus on the beggar, but on whether we've locked the door or not. The biggest mistake people make is dealing with the phenomenon, the thief at the door, instead of their response to it. The reason for this is that they've been made to believe that the thing they face is affecting them. If a person believes that distress is affecting them, they will, of course, feel obligated to deal with it. A person cannot remain indifferent to something they believe is affecting them. Therefore, trying to ignore something after labeling it as anxiety disorder, or a disease is difficult and meaningless. In such a situation, the person will inevitably engage with the phenomenon emotion. This results in blows that don't kill, i.e., feeding and reinforcing the process. Look at where the faulty perception of the problem starts and what consequences it causes. We will first perceive correctly. The first correct response to distress is to perceive it correctly. The distress we feel is the natural result of the distress emotion we face. However, the distress we label as I'm done, I'm finished, this is too hard, is the result of a faulty perception of distress. An insult affects everyone. However, turning it into a matter of honor is the result of our perception of the insult. Rule 3. We will use correct concepts. We will not label the process we are experiencing as anxiety, problem, or disorder. We will be aware that our brains are very sensitive to concepts. We will know that both little and a lot of distress are emotions. We will not make ourselves sensitive to distress by seeing the little bit as normal and a large amount as a problem. During stressful times, we will never break our daily routines. We will increase physical activities during stressful periods. The most effective way to do this is regular walking every day. If there is distress, we must certainly increase mental engagement. Even if we are unable to understand it fully, intensive reading during these times will be very helpful. The aim here is not to learn, but to keep the mind engaged. We will take warm showers. Visiting a cemetery, nursing home, and hospital once a week is very important. The brain cannot be convinced without seeing. And without being reminded, the brain often forgets. We should create opportunities like this to give our brains a healthy comparison opportunity.
We will not use poisonous triggering stimuli like, it hasn't passed, today I'm okay, yesterday I was bad. We will not attach meaning to daily or weekly emotional changes. The jump to distress is not about whether it's good or bad. We are good without distress, and we are good when distress spikes. This is just an emotion. The emergence or relative increase of the emotion does not mean being bad. We will not use unbalanced, imprecise terms like, I'm so bad. Have we measured, weighed, or evaluated it? How do we know we're so bad? Maybe we're moderately bad, maybe a little bad, maybe not bad at all. We just think we are. Just because it seems like that to us, does that make it true? A spike in distress doesn't mean being bad. It just means the time for the distress emotion has come, and we are simply experiencing an emotion. We will not fall into the logical error of wanting distress, that without its results by saying, but I can't sleep, but my appetite is gone, but distress is not just a feeling of distress. Every emotion triggers some additional experiences by its nature. Doesn't walking change the heart rhythm? Doesn't running make you sweat? Doesn't a cold cause sneezing, fatigue, coughing, etc.? Doesn't staying awake for 3 days cause fatigue? If there is distress, there will also be some natural consequences of this emotion. Therefore, we will not perceive and interpret these additional natural processes as separate problems, and we will not create the association that we have many problems. If there is a tree, there will also be branches. This does not mean that each branch is a separate tree. Brain, I'm stressed. Your response, normal, it could be. I'm human. Distress is a human emotion. Brain, but my sleep, appetite, etc. are gone. Your response, it could go, after all. Distress is not lived only as dry distress. Every tree has its branches. The fire that will extinguish the fire is not the fire itself. It's the way you respond to it. Whether you pour gasoline or water is the key. Brain, I'm so bad. Your response, no, I'm not bad. If it's really bad, I'm definitely not. Experiencing distress doesn't mean being bad. It's just experiencing a human emotion. Every emotion is an emotion. Both little and much are emotions. Brain, I don't want to do anything. Your response, don't want to. I don't always have to want to. If I have to do it, I will. If a surgeon doesn't feel like operating, does that mean we leave the patient on the operating table and go to the park? Brain, I can't enjoy anything. We will wait for the right things at the right time. You don't harvest crops in winter. Everything has its time and season. Stressful moments are not the times we should enjoy or expect enjoyment. People have been convinced that they should always enjoy whatever happens. When this is not possible, they normalize it and become more affected. Again, they keep adding fuel to the fire. Being normal doesn't mean always being on the same line. Being normal means crying at a funeral, laughing at a wedding. You don't expect to enjoy a funeral. It's not enough to expect the right things. We must also expect them at the right place and time. You don't expect potatoes from Miga in the middle of winter. You don't look for happiness on the battlefield. Brain, but it's never passing? Your response, does it need to pass immediately? Is there a negative problem or disease that requires it to pass? Is passing the only way out? Could waiting for it to pass be the most important reason why it doesn't? Waiting for it to pass might be sending the message to the brain that there is a dangerous situation, so it needs to pass, and as a result, the brain activates the distress even more powerfully. Am I feeding my own distress fire by waiting for it to go out? I think I should read this book a few more times during this process. Knowing is not enough. I think I need to align the brain of these things again and again while the process is fresh. Unfortunately, we are a society of exaggeration. We exaggerate marriage, so we exaggerate divorce. When someone exaggerates something, they automatically become inclined to exaggerate its opposite. We exaggerate love, passion, and separation. Those who exaggerate love, don't they exaggerate lovelessness? We exaggerate mistakes, faults, and wrongs. We exaggerate politics, parties, leaders. We exaggerate religious groups, sects, teachers, and sheiks. We exaggerate poverty, wealth, and money. We exaggerate the past, the present, and the future. How can it be possible for a society that exaggerates so many things not to exaggerate its emotions? Saying, don't exaggerate doesn't mean that being is simple. It means don't lose the balance. When we say don't exaggerate drinking water, we don't mean water is simple and unimportant.
There is a wrong perception that works in people. I was comfortable when I had no distress. When distress came, my mental comfort was disturbed. So the problem and responsibility is with my distress. However, this is a wrong interpretation. Experiencing a problem when distress arises doesn't mean that the distress is causing the problem. It means that the faulty perception we immediately enter with the distress is causing the problem. When this detail is missed, the distress emotion grows even bigger in people's eyes. The subconscious begins to think, how can an emotion that affects me be normal and insignificant? A person cannot ignore the emotion they believe is affecting them. In this case, they inevitably give importance to it. Giving importance means feeding it. We will give the flexible response of IT could be to almost every question and emotion. We won't dwell on it too much, saying it could be, and lingering there will make the brain give importance to the matter, so we won't go after long responses each time. We will remind our brain of the rational explanations not every time, but occasionally as extra suggestions. You can do this more effectively by reading these passages once every few days and sending the suggestion to the brain visually during stressful times. The sentences and expressions in this book are general suggestions to be read occasionally. The I2 could be suggestion is the immediate special response given in the areas of mind, emotion, and behavior. Bipolar exploitation and suggestions. I'm saying this with all sincerity, no matter how many experts gather on the other side of the river. If I'm the only one left on the side, they will never convince me that autism and bipolar disorder are clinical problems. If it's not a problem, the term problem is a vague one. It depends on how and from where you look at it. If you want, a person could even see cold weather as a problem. If you want, they could even perceive a tracksuit hanging in the neighbor's rear window as a problem. Seeing something as a problem and whether it is a clinical issue are different things. Bipolar is briefly defined as a mood disorder with two extremes. The term two extremes is very important. There will be shifts between two mood extremes, not just two emotions. One side will have depression and the other will have exhilaration. Nowadays, no one diagnosed with this condition has such shifts between the two extremes. Being sometimes depressed and sometimes euphoric does not make one bipolar. A small shop is different, a supermarket is different, and a hypermarket is different. Now, but even diagnosed people with a purely depressive process is bipolar. AS stretched this diagnosis with types like type 2, 3, etc. First, they accept it as a mood disorder, then they prepare a way to diagnose it even without the extremes. For example, they first define autism. They say if these and those are present, it's autism. Then they diagnose autism even if those signs are absent. They say it's atypical autism. Didn't they say autism existed only with certain signs? Whether they are there or not, it's still autism. Are there any tests or diagnoses? No. I have also worked with people diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I worked for 4 years at a unit called TRSM. We visited most of the people receiving services from there at their homes. We were amazed to find that none of them met the clinical diagnostic criteria. The psychiatrists were also surprised. They said, it must have been overlooked. Not just one or two, but all of them. How could they have been overlooked? But interestingly, even though the diagnoses were wrong, none of their bipolar diagnoses were updated. The treatments based on these incorrect diagnoses have been going on for years. People, thinking they might be bipolar, face many problems within themselves and with their surroundings. Adding the heavy side effects of medications to the mix only makes it worse. Many years ago, a blonde girl came to me. She was 17 years old, a sweet girl. She had a piercing on her nose, her skin was very white, and she had dyed blonde hair. She said she had a mood disorder. She came to our clinic once a week. Every time I saw her, she was energetic and said, I'm doing well now. 2 months later, we saw her father. Her father looked at me and said, my daughter has bipolar disorder. I said, I've never heard of that diagnosis before. He insisted and said, no, she has bipolar disorder, and the medicine is effective. But she was energetic and successful in everything she did. It wasn't a problem for her. Later on, I realized that the psychiatrist in her family had diagnosed her as bipolar. She wasn't depressed or manic either. I think this is just another common misperception.
And that wraps up this video. I hope you found the content both informative and thought-provoking. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on any future videos. Your comments are always valuable, so feel free to share your thoughts and opinions below. What topics would you like to see covered next? I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care and stay safe.